once, but my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I'm your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 71st year of the award at the 75th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 2002. Today's guest is one of our most frequent. You last heard him discussing Wallace and Gromit in a close shave in the nominees of 1995. Please welcome back for the 9th time, Christof. Hello, Christof.
Hello, thank you for having me back. It's going to be a great episode, I believe, because I really love the winner we're going to talk about today, and I'm really excited for this episode.
Yes, I'm glad to hear. I wouldn't think you would be, but I'm very excited to hear your thoughts in this year because
it's a very popular winner.
Yes, it certainly is. But yes, let's just try and move through this as quickly as possible. Just remind us, what is your familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
Well, I have seen all of the nominees, several of them multiple times. I really enjoy this category as a whole. There are some wonkier years that we're luckily not having to talk about today because this is a great year with a great winner, and I'm excited to dive into that one.
I'm glad to hear it. That's just how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you have some really good years. Sometimes you have some really bad years. Most of the time, it is just kind of a mixed bag. But yeah, we'll certainly get into this here. But before we do that, even though we are a very short film centric category in this show, there is also a Best Animated Feature category at the Academy Awards. So to be fair to them, Christof, I'm going to list off the names of each nominee for Best Animated Feature this year, and I want you to tell me just one word what you think about them. You ready? Okay, so the winner this year is Spirited Away.
I haven't even said yes yet.
I assumed the silence was recognition. I didn't think the fact that there was such a long pause was like, he's not going to say anything. He's just like waiting for me to say the first one. But okay. Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay. The winner is Spirited Away.
Amazing.
The second nominee, Ice Age.
Okay, funny. Okay, let's go with okay.
Third one, Lilo and Stitch.
Fine. Nice. Yes, fine.
Fourth one, Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron.
Boring.
And the final nominee, Treasure Planet.
Does that count as a word?
Yeah, it counts as like a part of the vernacular. Or I agree with some of your opinions there, though I won't say which ones they are. But
okay.
Let's just get into these nominees. Our first nominee and the year's winner is, of course, the ChubbChubbs, directed by Eric Armstrong. This is the first and only nomination and win for Armstrong, and the first nomination and win for Sony Pictures. Armstrong got a start at Sony as part of Sony Pictures ImageWorks as an animation director. He would oversee much of the character animation that the company would do on their various film projects, including Casper, Stuart Little, Hollow Man, and the first Harry Potter film. However, in the early 2000s, Sony was considering selling the company, but when nobody was buying it, and then they saw the success of Shrek, the studio decided to keep their VFX studio, as well as establish a whole animation production division, Sony Pictures Animation. Their first project to dip their toes in the water was this film, a little short film, perhaps as proof of concept for this whole animation idea. The film was released in theaters alongside Men in Black 2 and later with Stuart Little 2 due to the short's runaway popularity. There was even an animated feature and TV series in development based on this short, but nothing ever came of it, with Sony Pictures' first animated feature being 2006's Open Season, though there was a sequel short called The ChubbChubbs Save Xmas and was released in 2007. As for Armstrong, I can't find much info about him, but by his IMDb page, there's a strange gap in his career from 2002 to 2010. He must have had some falling out with Sony Pictures at some point, and he left the company. He now seems to be working mainly with the company Pixomondo, but still his most recent work is from 2017. I hope Armstrong is doing all right, though. But before getting into the plot, I want to point out at this Oscars, Armstrong was given his Oscar by Mickey Mouse, who just before was talking about Jennifer Garner's feet. Great stuff. Anyway, the ChubbChubbs is about an awful janitor working at a space nightclub who dreams of being a singer. He keeps injuring the alien Aretha Franklin and fails to warn everyone of the incoming ChubbChubb invaders. There's also some weird Star Wars references in there too. Christof, what did you think of the ChubbChubbs?
The ChubbChubbs.
Yes, the ChubbChubbs, the winner of this year.
I thought we were talking about Harvey Crumpet.
Maybe at some point you were supposed to do the Harvey Crumpet year, but I decided to give that to a different guest, someone we like more. So you get ChubbChubbs.
But I hate the ChubbChubb. I hate this entire year. You should have told me in advance.
I think I did tell you, but I think you just blocked it out. Either that or I forgot to send it. I don't know. But you're doing ChubbChubbs.
Okay.
So what do you think of ChubbChubbs?
Well, good thing I know all of these by heart, because I wouldn't have rewatched these anyway, because this is one of the possibly the worst lineup in the history of the category, and now I have to talk to you about it.
Yes, you do.
Well, the ChubbChubbs.
The ChubbChubbs.
The ChubbChubbs begins. Maybe we should reveal to our two listeners, if they think this is awkward. This is a bit we have been preparing for more than a year in advance.
Oh yeah, like when I was first setting out, like trying, because we've had an idea where it's just like you're just going to be on every decade, just so we can keep a person who has seen every single nominee keep appearing, just for a variety. Since most of my guests do not really watch many of the nominees in this category, which, can be fun, but just for a bit of variety, why not have somebody on regularly who has seen all these nominees? And so when we were discussing what years to do, like what year in which decade, I think I forget why we ended up choosing the ChubbChubbs.
Because I hate it. We're going to hate the entire lineup, and I just said it would be unfair to someone not familiar with the category to force this lineup upon them.
Oh, yeah. And then for some reason, we just had the idea where it's just like, oh, what if we said, like, you really wanted to do Harvey Crumpet year, but I had misled you and gave you the ChubbChubbs instead without telling you.
Yeah. It felt like awkward to just go on talking about the ChubbChubbs without revealing that this was a bit, even if it destroys the entire magic behind what we were doing here.
I would have thought we would have saved it to the end of the actual discussion or whatever, but it's fine. Let's just get into the ChubbChubbs.
Let's get into the ChubbChubbs.
This
exclamation
awful
mark.
Short.
Yeah, the ChubbChubbs exclamation mark begins with a bad cover version of Respect, performed by a three-breasted alien. It's not the worst cover version of Respect that is part of the ChubbChubbs. And this is ugly and not funny, which is a bad combination for an animated short that is supposed to be funny. It's just the main character is a bad janitor who is killing the singer of Respect 3 times over the course of a bit more than 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
There are references to Star Wars and other science fiction things like that. There's E.T. there for a moment. There's Xenomorph for a moment. Although I kept thinking this is not how references work. They're just these characters thrown in. It doesn't really do anything with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm half surprised that Alf wasn't there if so many aliens are suddenly being thrown around.
Alf is dated. Like, nobody cares about Alf in 2002 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Jar Jar Binks is in there, which pretty much dates this short to fairly recently after Star Wars Episode 1, when people were hating on Jar Jar Binks.
Mm-hmm.
So the plot basically is this janitor is thrown out of this thing, of this restaurant, for killing three-breasted Space Aretha Franklin several times. And then Jar Jar Binks is telling him that the ChubbChubbs are here. And then he tries to warn everyone in this restaurant, which leads him to killing Aretha Franklin the second and third time. He's thrown out both times, and then these huge creatures are there who are very intimidating. And then he's singing "Why Can't We Be Friends?" And then suddenly it turns out that these huge creatures, spoiler alert, these huge creatures aren't the ChubbChubbs. The ChubbChubbs are, in fact, the small furry creatures, which look kind of cute, who suddenly have enormous teeth and apparently start killing these big guys, which we don't see because it happens off screen, because the interesting thing is not being shown to us. And then it cuts to credits, and we hear the main character sing an even worse rendition of Respect.
And then there's also the post-credit scene where the alien is actually singing at the nightclub, and it's just like, and everyone in the audience hates it, but then the ChubbChubbs are like his background singers, and they threaten the audience into giving him applause, which, very ethical.
Yeah, it's ugly, and it's not funny. It feels like, I don't know, it feels like something that would be shown on some sort of comedy channel in the middle of the night between two shows to fill a bit more airtime. The jokes don't land. It feels very lazy. I mean, the only interesting thing is the little guys. I mean, basically, you could say this is a big guy, little guy thing, in which the little guys are killing the big guys, but we don't see the actual interesting thing.
Yeah, there are, in fact, big guys and little guys in this short, but I think of the two categories that Gore and I determined, this definitely fits more into sad guy sings song. The sad guy makes music.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the only good thing in this short is the titular ChubbChubbs, because they are genuinely cute, even though
that's true.
The animation doesn't really work for them. But yeah, it's just, I can't imagine going to theaters to see Men in Black 2 or Stuart Little 2 and seeing this and just being forced to watch this when you go in to watch something else. It's just like, I would feel like that Sony hates me. It wants me dead. Even though this is only like 4 minutes, like it's not like, it's not something like The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, which this is slightly better than, because that is 30 minutes long. This is only a couple minutes. We can bear through this, but still, Sony Pictures and Eric Armstrong hate me personally for making this film.
Yeah. I mean, this, even though it's so short, it's also badly paced, because the running joke with killing the singer, this is not how running jokes work. You don't do it 3 times within the first 2 minutes of your short, that's 5 minutes long, and then just not do it ever again. And then just forget you did this. I mean, you have a post-credit scene where you could have killed 3-breasted Space Aretha Franklin for a 4th time, and then at least it would be a functioning running joke that is somehow running through the entire thing. But just cramming it 3 times into the first 2 minutes, and then just not doing it again after that. Why?
Yeah, it's just like it. I'm not sure like what the main focus of like you were saying, it's just like the running joke that you would expect the short to be kind of built around, like him killing the singer over and over again after trying to warn them about the ChubbChubbs. It's just like it's everything in the short is essentially just a minor part of the short, except for the main janitor guy, who's the star of the short, and he is a terrible star. Which is kind of the point. He's meant to be seen as like this bad singer, or who, even though wants to be this big famous singer, he can't actually do it. But then you make him the star of your short, and but he also just fails at like everything, because he can't sing. He doesn't warn people about the ChubbChubbs. Some other guy does that. And even then, he thinks the ChubbChubbs are the wrong thing, which I imagine everyone else knows what the ChubbChubbs are except him. But the only thing he does right in this whole thing is not be seen as threatening to the ChubbChubbs, because he is such a failure at life. It's just like,
And in fairness, he is nice to the ChubbChubbs because he is trying to save them from the big creatures by putting them into a bucket, which for some reason they do not see as an act of aggression against them. So apparently they understand that he wants to be nice to them, which is why they are helping him.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how the ChubbChubbs function. I don't know how if they are actually evil creatures who attack everything, or if they I mean, what's the reason why they agree to be basically the supporting guys for this nothing of a character? Why? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, like why do they agree to be like these, like his bodyguards, or whatever, or like the background singers? It's just like, it's like we don't even set up that they have an interest in singing or anything. It's just like they're just there. It's just, there's just not anything going on in this short. It is not good.
There's barely anything here, and what is here doesn't make much sense.
It's like I wish this short was truly just about the ChubbChubbs, because they are just the best part of this, and I kind of want the ChubbChubb plushie, but at the same time, it's just like, it's not worth the money.
Definitely not. I mean, if it's really, you're right. The ChubbChubbs are basically like maybe the minions, where you would love to spend more time with them, but the film makes them supporting characters with no motivation that we can understand. So, why are they here? Why are we here? Why are we talking about this, and why did this win?
Mm-hmm. And I just want to also just point out, just like Sony Pictures Animation, they start out making this, then they make Open Season, then they make Surf's Up, and it's just like, why does this company stay open after this point? Like, if this is what they're putting out, why even bother anymore? But at the same time, I guess they do get, first off, they win an Oscar for this, undeservedly. They also get an Oscar nomination for Surf's Up. I imagine all these films make money too. And then it's like, and then they also make Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs after that, which is actually a good movie. But
Agreed.
Then it's just, Sony Pictures just has a lot of stumbling over itself over its career, or with, yeah, actually, it's really just Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and then eventually they make Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And that's all the good that they do. Or really just the films they do with Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Because Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Spider-Verse, Mitchell's vs. Machines, and Spider-Verse 2, those are their only good movies looking through this. It's just, again, why do they keep making all these movies? It's the question of the day, isn't it?
It is.
Oh, wait, I guess I forgot about their Aardman collaborations. They have Arthur Christmas and Pirates Band of Misfits.
Oh.
Yeah, those are fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting us off track.
Yeah, I think we should move on. We have sort of hit a dead end with the ChubbChubbs, surprisingly.
Yeah, the short film itself is just a dead end, or a dead beginning for Sony Pictures. Anyway, sorry. Our second nominee is The Cathedral, directed by Tomasz Bagiski. This is Bagiski's first and only nomination in this category, and while he studied architecture at university, he somehow found his way into effects work and animation. The Cathedral is called his first film by many people, including the director himself. However, from what I can tell, he made another film called Rain in 1997. Not sure why he rejects the film from his own filmography, but that's besides the point. The Cathedral isn't his only notable work, however. He also won a BAFTA award for his next short film, which is either his second or his third, depending on how you count, called Fallen Art. However, larger than all of this, and what he's truly most known for, is his work with CD Projekt Red, the Polish video game developer. Bagiski was the director of the opening cinematics for the entire Witcher trilogy and is a producer of the Netflix series based on those games as well. And most recently, Bagiski has directed the feature film Knights of the Zodiac this year. If you haven't heard of it, that's understandable. It received only a limited release and grossed only $7 million, despite a budget of $60 million. Hopefully, Bagiski can turn himself around. But in the meantime, let's look back at his quote-unquote first film. Made completely by himself over 3 years and based on a short story by Jacek Dukai, The Cathedral is about a man in a futuristic, fantastical world walking into a cathedral, or at least I assume it's a cathedral because that's the title. One last note, in 2011, Barack Obama was given an iPad by Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, which included The Cathedral on it, along with other Polish films, as well as a PC copy of The Witcher 2 and books by the original author of the Witcher series. So, The Cathedral, I have no idea what this movie is really about, because it's literally just a guy walking into this decrepit, organic seeming building, and then he has this staff that he puts down. And then all of a sudden, the planets are moving, light comes into the world, and the guy dies, I think, maybe. It's just very loose. And there's nothing really pointing me in any kind of direction in terms of any actual story or any kind of interpretation I could grab from this. It's all just so vague. And it's like, it looks nice, I guess, at least for the time. It's like, it's kind of ugly to look at nowadays. It's kind of like overdone. And like, it feels like a screen, like a background for your desktop or something. Like, that's what each frame of these, like those weirdly high definition in CG backgrounds that everyone has, but are also just super ugly. Those things. And it's just like, and it's about as deep as those two. Christof, do you have any insight into this short film, or are you as lost as I am?
You introduced this as the director's quote-unquote first film, and I believe the quote-unquote was more because of the first, after what you said. I would say that it should also apply to the film, because to me, this is not even a film. This is a pre-rendered cutscene from an early 2000s video game. You know, these parts of the game when the playable character reaches an important point and we see him walk around and speak, so the plot of the game is moved forward. Only this doesn't have a plot as being moved forward, so basically the only interesting thing of the cutscene is edited out here. I mean, who is this person? Why is he there? Where is he anyway? Why am I supposed to care about this? This is really, there's no context here. There is no idea what this is supposed to be. And it really looks like these cutscenes in the early 2000s video games. About the look, I mean, you told me before recording that the director is very much into AI these days. And I must say it makes total sense, because the aesthetic is very much AI. And if this came out today like that, and you told people that this is the first AI-generated animated short film, I would completely believe it, because it feels utterly soulless to me. It looks, I mean, as you said, in its day, this looked probably good. Today, it looks kind of, I would say it looks a bit murky and a bit dark. I wish there was more color or there was something that popped visually. The soundtrack is bombastic, but it's also kind of generic. So it's there's nothing really here that justifies even calling this a film, other than someone made it and it's how long, 8 minutes long or something like that. No, there's nothing of substance that's really here. So I really thought it was rough to go through, even if it looks nice occasionally, if you're into that kind of look.
Yeah, and it was really funny, both you saying it and me seeing it in like a bunch of letterbox reviews, like people like calling it like a video game cutscene, or like it feels that way. When especially once I had found out that this guy literally made video game cutscenes. Like,
Yeah.
And it's like, and like not only did he work on the Witcher series, he also did some work for Cyberpunk 2077. I think he made like the original teaser trailer for that game. But it's just like yeah. And I'm wondering like if maybe it's a chicken and egg sort of situation. It's just like maybe it's not like this looks like video game cutscenes, but video game cutscenes look like this. But yeah, like I just agree with everything you're saying. It's like it would be just nice to have some kind of context for anything that's happening. And this is based on some kind of short story, and it's like part of me wants to go and read that story, assuming there's an English translation, and just like see if that has more context about what the hell is going on here. Is like, or does it describe? Does the original story just describe guy walks into a building, there's weird faces on the wall, suddenly the world start to move and the man crumbles, and that's it. And it's just,
I mean, I couldn't believe it when you said it's based on a short story, because that implies that there's actually a story here. And I absolutely certain that it's not a mistake and that it's really a story behind there.
yeah, it's I couldn't tell you. Like I can try and like find the original short story and see if there's like a plot description in or, but I have no clue about this. I probably should have like looked into like the actual original short story, but I didn't. That's on me. I'm sorry to all the listeners out there, those of you out there who absolutely have seen this specific lineup, have seen Cathedral, and are the biggest fan of it, and know the intricate story that's in this is, and are just so mad that I don't appreciate that me and Christof both don't appreciate what's going on here.
I mean, you are excused, because I really cannot imagine anyone watching this and thinking, wow, this is such a great story. I want to know more about it. If anything, it's a baffled, is there a story even here?
I can't think of a story that's here.
Yeah, same.
But I think we've been circling at this point, so I think it's time to move on. This is probably going to happen with nearly all of our short films here, because as we were talked about beforehand, this is the year where nothing happens.
Yeah, we have to apologize. This is probably the worst episode of this podcast ever, because there's really nothing to talk here, and I believe we already have enough dead space between us. We're just wondering, what are we doing here? And should we just move on to the next one?
And that's why we started this thing with a joke, because it's like that's the only thing we could think of to make this episode a little bit interesting. It's like how last episode we made up the fact that Greta Gerwig listens to our podcast. As just like because there were two short films that year we didn't really want to talk about, so we made up a joke then too.
What do you mean made up?
Oh yeah, my bad. I had dreamed that we made that up, but in this reality, we Greta Gerwig is our biggest fan. We have millions of listeners,
Yeah,
and all of them love
absolutely.
Cathedral.
Yeah.
But yes, let's move on to our third nominee, which is Das Rad, translated in English as The Wheel, but its American title is Rocks, directed by Chris Stenner, Arvid Ubil, and Heidi Wittlinger, I think it is. Wittlinger. This is the first and only nomination for Stenner and Wittlinger, and you might notice that there's a name missing there. That's partially because the Academy at this time only allowed at most 2 people to be nominated per film in this category, but also Arvid Ubil passed away during production, and the film is dedicated to him. The film was made while our 3 directors were enrolled at Film Academy Baden-Württemberg. The stop-motion puppets were made out of wood and rubber, while the environments were computer-generated. After this film, the only thing I can find from the nominees is Chris Stenner, who had gone on to a somewhat significant animation and visual effects career, working on films like Corpse Bride, Iron Man 2, Hugo, Fast 5, Ad Astra, and the one and only Ivan. Das Rad is a story that takes place over thousands of years as rock creatures sit around and do not much while the history of human evolution happens around them. Christof, what did you think of Das Rad?
First of all, I feel bad. I should have volunteered to pronounce all the German names here, like Heidi Wittlinger, Arvid Übel, and Filmakademie Baden-Württemberg, which I think would have been a bit easier to roll off my tongue than of yours.
I've gone through worse pronunciations, and
you did a great job.
Thank you. But I'm just saying, there's been harder stuff I've had to pronounce, and I always try my best. And it's like in my script, like especially for like on the last nominee, I wrote out phonetically for myself Tomasz Bagiski and Jacek Dukai is so I try to help my if I see a name that looks hard to pronounce, I try to write down pronunciation for it. However, I thought I could handle Heidi Wittlinger and Baden-Württemberg.
Yeah, and you did.
I think I did well enough, although I did awkwardly pause on Wittlinger because I realized I thought it was going to be Wittlinger, but then I realized, wait, these people are German.
Yeah, I mean, Das Rad, it has a concept that I really love. I love the idea. I hate the execution. Our main characters here are 2 piles of rock who don't really have this distinct character, except that one is bigger and the other is smaller. So
big guy, little
basically
guy.
Another big guy, little guy. And the big guy is sitting there while the little guy has a bit of an interest in the things that happen around them. The idea is that time is moving so fast or so slowly, one of the two. Time is working differently for rocks than for human beings. So human evolution is just zipping by these rocks who are seeing what happens around them, what the humans are doing around them. And the weird thing is, again, this is a pacing issue for me. This short is 8 minutes long, and it takes 3 minutes for this film to finally introduce the first human character, showing us the first human character. And before that, we spent just time with these 2 piles of rock without actually doing something about developing the characters. They're basically the same, except that one is interested in surroundings and the other is not, and one is big and one is small. It also then doesn't really do a great job of showing the different way the time progresses for these characters, because sometimes we just see humanity zipping through and then it gets slowly again, but then we spent some time with a human when the wheel of a wagon is breaking. I wish there would have been some kind of visual clue when we are in human time and when we are in rock time. This maybe would have helped.
There was a visual clue, like the background, because when you look at the background, like when it's on rock
Yeah,
time, the clouds are moving
it's
by really
zipping.
fastly.
Yeah,
But when it's in human time, the clouds are like frozen.
yeah. I think I would more like something a bit more obvious, something that's a bit more signaling. I'm not thinking color or black and white. It's just the fact that in one thing the clouds are zipping by and we have faster day and night and things are working through. It's just more a thing of things happening faster or slower. It's not really maybe an additional visual clue to that, because I didn't really. Maybe the problem is also another thing. The things that happens with the humans mostly happens in the background. We don't see different stages of human evolution or different stages. It's just we see the wheel, and then it moves forwards. We suddenly see skyscrapers and stuff, and then suddenly it's the humanity is all over again. There is not a lot that really, not a lot of details. This would have been a chance to show how humans developed and how things got fast. It really feels like the idea needs a bit more thinking about and a bit more details to go for the execution. And we're spending instead a lot of time with these two rocks who don't really have a lot going for them.
I definitely understand where you're coming from with this. And it's like I agree that not much happens. I agree that the concept is interesting, though it doesn't do that much with it. But at the same time, I found myself really liking this one. I think it was mainly because I found myself really focusing in on a lot of the little details that are in this short, because it does do a lot of little interesting things in it. Like I appreciate like the way it shows that the rocks are like that a long time has passed. Like the first thing that happens in this film is that one of the rocks has like a lot of moss growing on him, and he has the other guy come over and like pick it off him. And it's just like there's things like that, and like there's also when the wheel falls off the wagon, it's like the one of the rock guys picks it up, and it's like and he starts to piece everything together. It's just like, oh, these are people who have like started to build society, and it's all based around the wheel. But as he tries to show it to the other rock guy, the wood is like rotting away and he can't show him a wheel, so he just shows this little circular rock. And it's like I appreciate like a lot of those little things, and it's like that just really got me to stay invested in the short film, despite the fact that there's not really that much going on. But I think it's mostly just it charms me. I'm not really sure why, but I just found myself just thoroughly charmed by this film. And it's just, yeah, I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed the characters, how little character there might actually be there, but I enjoyed the little rock creatures. I like the way they were animated. It's just like it's a cute little film. And
I must say,
I was just gonna say it's just like, and I know that I enjoy cute little films more than you
yeah,
enjoy cute little films.
yeah. I must say, what I really didn't like was the voice work here, because it was the way these characters, this box were played, was very kids TV show voices. And I have to say, these two voice actors who were playing these are fairly successful and fairly good German voice actors. One of them, Michael Habeck, is the German voice of Ernie on Sesame Street and of Barney Rubble and of Chief Wiggum and Dr. Nick Rivera and
Oh, wow.
Willie and of Dobby the House Elf. And I'm fairly certain he's the small guy. And the big guy, Rainer Basedow, did a lot of more work as a TV actor, but he also voiced Pumbaa in The Lion King. So these are professional actors who know what they're doing, and I just have to believe that they were being told that they have to voice this as if they were doing a TV show for small kids, because this kind of voice this kind of voice work that they did was a bit off-putting to me because it reminded me so much of children's TV shows, which I would say is not the right way, the right way to tackle this kind of thing, which I would not say is aimed at kids. And maybe this is just a thing because I know how German kids' TV shows sound, and it maybe doesn't sound like that for someone who isn't German. But this is just something that I found hard to overcome.
Yeah, like that's just that's not something I really experienced because of course you have the context around it. Like I was barely listening to voices. I was just reading the subtitles. So that's definitely more something that you'd pick up on more sooner than I would. But yeah, it's just, and also while I was watching this, I was in my head, I was comparing it to there's a recent nominee in this category, recent in terms of this year, like a few years before this one, called Humdrum. It was an Aardman animated short film. It's about these shadow puppets. It's who are bored, and like that's the whole short. They're just these shadow puppets on a wall, and they're bored. They're doing nothing, and that's the whole short. We're supposed to laugh at them being bored, or eventually the shadow puppets start doing shadow puppets because haha, that's meta, but it's still not funny at all. And it's just like this feels like a better version of that to me, where it's just like this one at least has interesting things happening around them. Like you have the whole of human history happening while these rocks are just bored out of their mind, just doing nothing. One guy's just rolling a fucking wheel, and the other one is literally just sitting there letting moss grow on him. And it's just like I think this has that juxtaposition, whereas the other one is just bored people being bored, and you as the audience member are bored with them. But again, you clearly have a different perspective. You're also bored watching this. So I don't know. I just like the comparison.
Yeah, I also think they didn't land the ending because they actually had a good exit line with the big guy saying, "Das ist ja noch mal gut gegangen," which the subtitles sort of accurately translated, "That was lucky." Basically saying, because at the end it's very strongly implied that humanity is dead and no humans exist anymore, and that was lucky for the rocks that this just went over with, that this thing is just over. But after that, they just go on to exit on some dull banter, and I just believe that just saying "Das ist ja noch mal gut gegangen" would have been a great exit line, and maybe would at least be stronger than just continuing with some dull banter to go out on.
I like the moss banter. I think it's cute. I think it builds their character, or it shows that
the little character there is.
Yes, it's like in my mind, it's like they're this old married couple, like, or as like married as rocks can be. And it's just like, and like their whole relationship is just kind of them sitting there, and one gets moss off the other one, and it's just like, you can just infer so much about like their history together from just that, and it's just like I don't know. I'm reading a lot into it, but at the same time, it's just like it works. It works for me in the way that
And
it doesn't
for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Shall we move on?
I think I was about to say, yeah, if we did not move on, we were just going to start circling. So our fourth nominee is Mike's New Car, directed by Pete Docter and Roger L. Gould. This is the first and only nominations for Docter and Gould in this category, and the fifth nomination for Pixar. I'm going to focus more on Pete Docter here simply because there's more information about him, but I just want to say that Roger Gould did direct the later nominated short Bounden, but does not get credited in that nomination. Anyway, Pete Docter began his life being bullied for being weird and awkward. He coped with this by learning how to do flipbook animation. He eventually would go to school for art, first at the University of Minnesota before transferring to Cal Arts, even winning a Student Academy Award for his film Next Door. When graduating in 1990, Docter got two offers, one from Pixar and one from The Simpsons. He chose to work with Pixar, and to this day, he wonders why the hell he picked Pixar over The Simpsons. But it seems it panned out either way. And Doctor was actually recommended to John Lasseter personally as a good fit for the company. He was only the third animator ever hired for Pixar, but Doctor instantly felt right at home. He quickly took on more and more tasks at the company, from animating to writing, sound recording, composing, the works. He was a key part in many of Pixar's early feature films, developing the stories for Toy Story 1 and 2, and got his first chance to direct with Monsters, Inc. To this day, Doctor remains one of the biggest parts of Pixar animation, and with them has earned 9 Oscar nominations, 4 for Best Animated Feature, 4 for Best Original Screenplay, and this one for Best Animated Short. He's won 3, all for Best Animated Feature, making him the biggest winner in that category so far. But going back to the category we actually care about, Mike's new car was always envisioned as a DVD extra for the release of Monsters Inc. They were just so in love with the world they created for that film and didn't want to let the characters go, but also didn't want to make a whole sequel, at least not yet. So they took an old Pete Docter idea about a guy getting a new car and adding Mike and Sully to the mix. It's the first Pixar short to feature pre-existing characters, as well as the first to feature dialogue. The film is about Mike, as in Mike Wazowski, the character from Monsters Inc., getting a new car. And Sully is there too. Antics ensue. So, for what this is, that being a DVD extra, it's cute. It's fun. As a film, it's a bit light on comedy. It's for a film that really wants to be funny. I didn't laugh that much. It was like I got a chuckle here and there. Or like it has the makings of like a good comedic short, but I don't think it really has enough good gags to really make it stand out. So it just ends up being a lightly comedic DVD extra that somehow got an Oscar nomination.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's mercifully short, and this is one thing the entire lineup is going, maybe the only thing this entire lineup is going for it. Most of these films suck, but at least they are over quick enough. None of the films we're talking about is much longer than 10 minutes. The longest is 10 minutes and 4 seconds, including credits. And altogether, they are less than 35 minutes. It's one of the shortest lineups the two of us have been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Especially in like the modern era. Like it's definitely...
Yeah. If this was a single short film somehow, it would still be eligible in this category.
Imagine, I'm just imagining like a nominee or winner in this category that is literally just 5 short films.
Yeah. I previously said that Cathedral is not a film. I would say Mike's New Car is barely a film. It feels more like a deleted scene. And when you call it a DVD extra, that's pretty much what it is. It relies on your prior relationship with Mike and Sully. And personally, I'm probably one person who never really cared for Monsters Inc. So my relationship with them is not great. I also have to admit I haven't seen Monsters Inc. in a long time. I'm not sure if this is really Mike's character as he's presented here. He's just easily annoyed, which just isn't a good look. And there's really not much happening here. Mike presents his new car. He's proud of it. Sully is adjusting his seat, which Mike is annoyed by. And then there's this bing, bing, bing noise, and Sully fastens his seatbelt, and Mike falls out of the window, and he can't get back again, and he slams his finger, and he falls into the engine, and he screams, and he enters the car again. There are too many knobs and buttons and thingamajigs to press, and the windshield wipers are going, and for some reason they're being propelled back and forth into the car, and Mike is annoyed, and for some reason this seems to be Sully's fault till he sees things, and Sully gets out, and car drives out of the frame, and just as in the ChubbChubbs, the most interesting thing happens off screen as the car explodes, and the wheels are driving by, and Mike is flying by, and Mike misses his old car. The end.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Yep.
chuckled once or twice, but this is, as I said, this is value film. This is that's it. That's the short.
Yeah, and it's just like you have the same kind of setup in like a lot of different like TV shows and things like that. Like I can't like it's such a common gag where it's like a person doesn't know how to operate a car, so they press something and suddenly the windshield wipers start going, the alarm starts going up. It's just like this is such a common gag, and it's just
Yeah.
like this doesn't really do anything with it. It just does the same old shtick. Like it's just there's nothing really creative here. It's just, yeah, this is a joke we've seen 1,000 times before. It's telling the joke again, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny because the joke, it wouldn't be such a popular joke if it wasn't kind of funny. But at the same time, in order to stand out, you need to be a little more than kind of funny, and this just doesn't do that. So it just kind of it blends into the extensive canon of Pixar shorts. It blends into this lineup. It's just like I just don't care that much about this. But it's fine. It's fine while I'm watching it, but then I immediately forget it exists.
Yeah, that's also part of the reason why it feels like a deleted scene, because it makes sense that it was edited out of the final feature because it wouldn't really add anything, and it's just things that are better out of the film than in the film.
Mm-hmm. And I also I also want to just point out that this is the film that starts Pixar's losing streak, because this is their 5th nomination. They lost their first nomination, won 3 in a row, and now this is the start of like their losing streak because they get a few more nominations. I don't think they win again until Piper. I'm pretty sure that one was Pixar, not Disney. But yeah, it takes a while for them to win again. And so
Wah, wah, wah.
Mike's new car, this is all your fault. You should feel bad.
Yeah, you should.
And that's a good place to move on. just the shaming of the short. But yeah, we'll move on to our 5th and final nominee, which is Mount Head, also called Atamayama, directed by Koji Yamamura. This is the first and only nomination for Yamamura. He originally studied painting at Tokyo Zoke University and using that to start a career as a background artist for animated films and shows. However, over time, he eventually broke away from that to create his own animated films. His animated work is fueled by a disinterest in mainstream Japanese animation, the assembly line nature of it, calling it watered down and uniform. Instead, Yamamura self-produces animated films, often using intricate traditional animation techniques, creating lush and distinct worlds. Along with Mount Head, his most notable work is probably Franz Kafka's A Country Doctor, his 2007 film that won the Ofuji Noburo Award, which is a prestigious award in Japanese animation. Mount Head, originating from a famous Rakugo story, which are comedic monologues, is about a hoarder who discovers a tree growing out of his head. Christof, what did you think of our final nominee?
I am so confused by this. This is by far the weirdest of the 5 nominees, which I don't mean in a particularly positive or negative way. It's just strange. I mean, this guy is very stingy, so he swallows the cherry stone because he doesn't want it to go to waste, which is the reason why there's suddenly a tree growing out of his bald head. And then the really confusing things begin, because suddenly people are under this cherry tree on his head. And so the question, and the implication is that these are just normal people. So neither these are tiny people, nor that he's a giant, but somehow these people are gathering on his head around the tree, because at one point, one of the characters also kicks his shoe off and it lands in a cup of noodles of the main character. And so the shoe is regular sized when it's in his cup of noodles, but it still was previously on the foot of this supposedly much tinier character on his head. And this incident is also the reason why this guy is so annoyed that he's tearing out the tree from his head, when suddenly he has a hole in his head in which a lake gathers, and then there are people around the lake on his head. And it gets even more confusing after that because, spoiler alert, at the end of the short film, the man is throwing himself into the pond in his head and dies because he's drowning in his own head. I'm confused. I'm bewildered. I don't hate it, which is something I couldn't say about all of the other nominees we've been talking about so far. Although there are some irritating things here, there's a lot of narration which is half spoken and half sung, which I found a bit annoying. But overall, I'm bewildered by the existence of this short. It's strange, but I don't hate it. It's just very, very odd.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I would leave it for now.
Yeah,
I'm interested in your thoughts.
I quite like this one. Like I was also pondering a lot of the same questions you had. Also including I think like when his head turns into the pond, I think people are also fishing in that pond, and that just was its own set of questions, along with the guy who kicks his shoe off that is like small on his head but it's big in the cup, and then the whole ending of the film where it's like he walks, like the way the film ends, it's like he walks up this hill and then he ends up on the top of his head. He looks down into the pond and it does this really cool effect where it's like it's going like on his head is a tiny man who has a little pond on his head, which also has a tiny man. It's like it's very recursive. It's like it's really nice effect, drawing effect, and then it ends with him. The really the narrator just says, and then he drowns in his own head and dies, and then that is how it ends. But
this is how all shorts should end, at least in this lineup.
And it's like, again, it's like one of the interesting things just happens off screen, but at the same time there's a lot of interesting things that happen in this short.
It's also some kind of big guy little guy. So is Mike's new car, actually. Cathedral is the only one which doesn't have some big guy little guy thing about it, although none of these are big guy little guy shorts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, and also I mentioned this to you before, but you had said that this one is the strangest of them, but at the same time, this is the one with the most clear story, or at least the one with an actual story going on here. Because it's
something's happening here. That's right.
Exactly. It's like the ChubbChubbs tries to have a story but fails, and then the other ones range from no discernible story at all to barely a story, mainly just a vehicle for jokes. As just like this is the one where it's like things happen and there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's actual characters involved, or singular character, but it's a good movie.
And
I enjoyed it.
Still, there are scenes where where things are happening, I just wonder what the fuck is happening here. Like cherry blossoms are in bloom, celery men are in bloom, office girls are in bloom. What does this mean?
I also like that. I didn't really understand what it was saying. I'm not sure what it means, especially like, but maybe it was just saying that like that's when people go on vacation or when they chill under the trees or whatever. It's like, because when you look at the people around the tree, there's a lot of the salarymen, there's a lot of the office girls or whatever they said it was, and it was just, so like maybe it's just like, yeah, when the cherry trees are in bloom, they get all these kinds of people to lounge under them, and therefore that's why there's all these people on his head. And but yeah, I'm curious, how would you react if you suddenly started Timothy greening and just started growing things on your head?
I would probably try to cut it off as well, like this guy.
Mhm. And
I would just hope that people wouldn't start gathering on my head.
and I do like the detail about I do like how he keeps his hoarder energy where it's like he cuts off the little clippings at the start of it and he keeps them all in a little jar. All right. It was
Yeah.
just like and I was hoping that would come back in some way, but it doesn't. But it's like whatever. It goes in its own interesting directions that I still enjoy.
I also have to say, I'm not just confused on a textual level. I also don't really understand the moral behind it because is it supposed to be a cosmic justice of some kind that if you are stingy, a tree will grow on your head and you will drown in yourself? I don't understand how this works in a larger moral way.
My interpretation is that it's just about like a guy who does not want to share. He's a hoarder. He doesn't want to share things, and it's like, and so he's like given. It's almost kind of like a jigsaw kind of situation where it's just like he's given this test. It's just like he's being forced in this terrible situation. It's just like if you can do this, you can like learn to you can look at your life in a different perspective and start to like finally live in a way that's good for yourself. But instead he gets rid of the tree because he hates that other people are enjoying it. And then it's just like and then he's left with a pond and it's just like, oh, he also wants to get rid of that, but you can't, it's hard to get rid of a hole in your head. And so it's just like he kills himself because he can't stand sharing.
But it's never really stated that he doesn't like to share. He's stingy, but not because he doesn't want to share, but because he doesn't want to let things go to waste, which is also the reason why he is swallowing the cherry stone, which starts the tree growing. And he doesn't get rid of the tree on his head because other people are enjoying it. He's getting rid of it because the people who are enjoying it are beginning to annoy him and are really impacting his day-to-day life.
Mhm.
So how one leads to the other and one is a justified consequence of the other is something, as I said, this is confusing on all levels.
Mhm.
The animation is fun. I have to say that, and especially this lakeception thing at the end when the level it's fun. It's confusing. I cannot say I love it. I definitely didn't hate it.
Yeah, I also really enjoy the character design. Like I love the way the main guy looks.
Yeah, it stands out in this crop of nominees for me just by not sucking. And also actually being a short film. So yeah,
Mhm.
it is. I don't love it, but I respect it for being something.
Yeah, it's like in another lineup, it would be the most forgettable third or fourth place, but in this one, it is the cream of the crop for you.
Yeah, without spoiling the rankings.
Yeah, I think you've just been clear enough. Like it was hard to avoid the fact that this is the one you hate the least when talking about it. But it's like, but it is a bit of a question, like which is the worst one for you of this lineup? And also, like I've been pretty complimentary to some of these, so it's like you don't know what my number one is. You might know what my number 5 is, but you don't know what my number 1 is yet.
Yeah, that's right. I think there are 2 that might be your number 1.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of which, let's just get to these rankings. Let's get this episode done with. So now that we've talked about the 5 nominees, let's rank them all. Christof, start us off with your number 5.
Number 5 is the ChubbChubbs. It's bad on every level. Nothing is landing. It's ugly. and it does things to the wonderful song Respect, which never should have been done to the wonderful song Respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my number 5 is also the ChubbChubbs, just a truly abysmal comedic short. It is the fourth worst winner of all time in this category, and the third worst winner of this decade. It is just truly abysmal. And I can't believe there's two worse films that win in the 2000s. This is not going to be a fun decade.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're keeping track at home, try and guess what the other two winners are. The answer might surprise you. But what's your number 4, Christof?
Well, how bad is the ChubbChubbs?
Very.
It's very bad. It's so bad that it's in 5th place, when in 4th place is something which I said is not even a film. So Cathedral, by virtue of not even being a film, but just something that looks like it's AI generated, and is absolutely soulless, has to be my number 4.
My number 4 is also the Cathedral. Like, before, this used to be actually my favorite of the lineup, but on this rewatch, I was a lot less moved by the visual style and a lot more impacted by the lack of story. It was just like, yeah, it's a nice tech demo, but that's it. It's just like there's nothing to grab onto here. So that's my number 4. What's your number 3, Christof?
I wonder if this might actually be the first time we're lining up, because I think we might have the same number 3 as well. My number 4 is the one which is not a short film. So my number 3 probably is the one, should be the one that is barely a short film, but really just a deleted scene. It's Mike's new car.
My number 3 is also Mike's new car. It's like, yeah, it's lightly funny, which makes it better than these other two films. But at the same time, it's not funny enough or not enjoyable enough to be as good as the other two films. So it sits right here in the middle. Your number 2.
My number 2. These are basically falling in by default, because luckily I could say that one isn't a short film. I could say one is aggressively bad, one isn't a short film, one is barely a short film. So we're just with the one which has a great idea and terrible execution. Das Rad is my number 2.
And my number 2 is Mount Head.
I
know. And it's like, these were very close for me, but I still really enjoyed Mount Head. And I think maybe if I think about it a bit longer, if maybe I watched the two shorts like a day ago rather than right before recording, maybe Mount Head would have sat better with me. But just in this moment, I think I enjoyed Rocks more than Mount Head. But even then, Mount Head is still a really great short film. It is so... I love the way it looks. I love the way it moves. I love the story it tells. It's just a very good short film that I'm glad was nominated. But you're number 1, Christof.
Before I go to my number 1, can I go on a short tangent?
Of course.
The German Film Awards have an interesting system where they are handing out their awards in gold, silver, and bronze, the Best Picture awards only. So for any given year, you don't only have the winner for Best Picture, but you also have the runner-up and the second runner-up. This has only been in the few most recent years, however, because before that there was a winner and 2 runners-up. And the system of having a winner and 2 runners-up, 1 award in gold and 2 in silver, has been going on for quite some time, but there's been an important change in how the awards have been handed out in 2001, I think, because from 2001 on, the German Film Awards have been handed out. It could be from 2001. It have been handed out by an academy that has styled itself in the way of the academy that hands out the Oscars. So we got voting members in different, the actors voting for actors for the nominations, and then everyone votes for the winners. And the winner in the end is the one who gets the most votes. Before that, the awards have been handed out by juries, some kind of juries. Don't ask me how these juries have come together. It's probably kind of complicated. Why am I saying this? I'm telling this because before 2000, there have been a few years which were kind of fun. 1993 is one of those years. 1987 is another one of those years, in which the jury convened and then came to the result that this year, no German film has been good enough to be awarded the Best Picture award. So we're only handing out runner-up awards. And I must say, it must have felt really shit to win a runner-up award in those years, like 1993, when the jury was basically saying, well, we actually think your film sucks. It sucks so bad that we do not want to give it Best Picture, have the runner-up award. So I'm almost inclined to say that this is a year where it just feels wrong to hand out, to declare any of these 5 nominees a winner, because I really like none of these 5. However, if you force me, then by default, the one I don't hate, but am merely confused by, has to be my winner. So by default, my number 1 is Mounthead.
Interesting. That story you told about the German Academy reminds me of a little thing in the Tony Awards. I think it was like 1983 or 84. And it's just like they forego, like I forget if it wasn't Best Musical, but I think it was Best Actor and Actress, or lead actor, lead actress in a musical. They just didn't hand out those awards because they deemed that there wasn't enough eligible contenders to be, or at least of the contenders that were eligible, none of them were good enough to be nominated, which must have really sucked for like the kid who was playing Tom Sawyer and Big River and things like that. It's just like they just didn't want to hand him out. So, but anyway, my number 1 is Das Rad, because I just really liked it. I was so thoroughly charmed by it. I loved the animation style that was going on, and it's like I love the little story it tells. It's like just seeing humanity just through this fast perspective. And I like how it ends with all of humanity dying and just fate just being overtaken by nature. Or it's like it's a really like poignant ending to me. And it's like, and you were complaining about how it didn't end with just the like, well, that was lucky line and had a little bit of answer. But I think that's all part of a really good ending thing. And it's just I just really liked it. And it's like I was saying, maybe if I sat with Mounthead a little bit, it'll stay with me longer and maybe like improve in my thoughts on it. But here and now, my opinion is that I enjoy Das Rad, also called The Wheel, also called Rocks, more than Mounthead, also called Atamayama. That's my thoughts.
And that concludes this exciting crop of nominees.
But before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Christof, or anything that you'd like to promote?
Another funny thing about the German Film Awards, maybe, there's an interesting record. The film with the most nominations at the German Film Awards is The White Ribbon, 13. It also has the most wins, which is 10. Yeah. But an interesting stat is Lola Rent, Run Lola Run, has the strange German Film Awards record of having 6 nominations and 7 wins.
Oh.
Which happens because it won everything it got nominated, and it got the Audience Award, which was a thing that year. I'm not sure it's still a thing right now, but this is how you can have more wins than nominations and have this interesting record.
And I imagine there just weren't nominations for the Audience Award. It was just
it was just a popular vote. I think I'm not sure if it's a popular vote, if it's actually just the German film which sold the most tickets that year. Even that's something I think it's also something which has been changed over time. that there's not actually a vote, but yeah, the audience award goes for the highest grossing German film of the year.
Okay. Well,
But there's little suspense beforehand.
well, thank you, Christof, for coming on the show, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the Short Podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.